To welcome you to the last session of SPLASH-E today. We have two great final paper presentations, and then I'll put up some discussion prompts, and we'll end the day by kind of summarizing, right? What have we learned? Where are we going towards that past, present, and future theme that we have for this year's SPLASH? But to begin the session, I'm excited to introduce Rose, who is live streaming from Massachusetts, to talk about centering humans in the programming languages classroom, building a text for the next generation.
Thank you for the introduction. So let's get into what this talk is about. By the way, can you please mute the room? I'm hearing myself and it's distracting me. Okay, so the outline. So there are 5 parts to this. There is the introduction of what the project is, what's about. There's a description of the text that's common. I'm going to do a description of what I have done to the teaching now, and sharing stories from my students in the classroom. This is a research paper, so there's also some data analysis that I did to inform the text. And the people to live it. Okay, so this is talking about the development of my new open access textbook in the programming language and critics with it. This is focused more on the process behind developing that project. For anyone who wants to read the book or the course materials, the links and the QR codes are at the bottom of the slide. So the audience for this book is it's aimed at going to fit into basically the PL elective slot in a CS curriculum, so it's upper level. At the same time, I'm proud to say it's the first truly interdisciplinary book of this kind with shared emphasis on programming language theory and human computing. So the role that has, rather than being aimed primarily at people in an HCI program, is to give that breadth and to basically open up some of these human-centered design discussions to people whose day-to-day core is more on the program side. And so the scale that we're looking at, it's a 20-chapter textbook. It's about 100,000 words of text. The last time I converted it to a PDF, it converted to about 600 pages. All right, and so the way that I like to motivate this, for the sake of rhetoric, is we can ask who takes a programming languages course, because each book and each design have a different underlying idea here. Some people say courses are taken by students who want to know a lot of different languages. This is that old idea of the PL zoo that's been heavily criticized by PL educators. A second kind that I've taken plenty of in my own graduate studies is courses that are designed for students who want to do a research career in programming language foundations, programming language theory. Okay, we've got great textbooks for this. And the third one, this is perhaps the style that I taught before I started building this book, is that students are also taken by people who want to become programmers for a job, and they want to have a strong understanding of their tools. And it's not that we don't need any of these courses. There's a reason these courses were developed. But the underlying idea of this new book and this new course is a radical different way of answering this question. The idea being that programming language courses are taken by students who will need to work in interdisciplinary teams in the future, who need to work across disciplinary boundaries, and who need to be able to understand programming languages as a breadth, stacked up both by data and by place. We are visual, but it's also backed up by the fact that the last time that I taught the graduate PL course last year, only 25% of my audience were graduate students in computer science. We have people in robotics, in data science, in computational media, games, also a lot of undergraduates. And so we really need to be able to keep this technical core in there while tending to a very diverse audience in terms of technical interests. And so the way that I scope this just to look at the 2 courses I teach, or 2 of the 3 courses I teach, I should say. So in my undergraduate course, we're usually looking at CS majors with about 3 years of prior experience who have worked in interdisciplinary projects before. Most of them are comfortable with multiple programming languages and not comfortable with proofs. In my graduate course, we've got all different kinds of majors. We've actually got plenty of undergrads and all the way up to PhD as well in that same classroom. Very wide range of experience, but very few of them are comfortable with proofs, except for perhaps PhD students in my lab. To give you a sense of what's in the book, here's the outline of chapters. I included length estimates from the platform. So we start out with kind of the CS core. And what I'm doing is I'm giving them a review of things they may have learned in their formal languages course, moving on to core ideas like inference rules, operational semantics, defining type systems, abstract syntaxes. But I'm doing all of this with implementation work they can do to tie into their existing skill set. We then have the next core area being sort of an HCI core, drawing both on ideas from the social sciences and even some ideas from critical studies in the humanities. So we do everything from how to design a user study with quantitative and qualitative methods to bringing in critical perspectives from gender studies and disability studies. Because I have substantial collaboration with our games and media program, there's kind of a whole sub-module on case studies in media. But these aren't just case studies in the sense of a zoo. These are case studies that are used to reinforce everything they learned in the two core modules. Because I am also still active in programming language foundations and theory, we also have things that are meant as kind of a teaser or an advertisement to students who might be interested in advanced research level study in those areas. Okay, and interdisciplinary work is always hard, and designing an interdisciplinary curriculum is no different. So I settled on a core pedagogical strategy for designing the textbook. The core here is that there are these 5 core characters called the archetypes, which stand in for different academic disciplines and perspectives on the design of programming languages. The core goal I emphasize in the course is not to be an expert in every area, but to have the ability to communicate and to be literate across these different disciplines, and to use design as a conversation that can bring all of these different archetypes together. Those archetypes disproportionately represent computer science. This is an intentional decision. So we call the practitioner our person who's programming for a job. The implementer is someone who implements programming language technology, such as writing an interpreter or compiler. The theorist is someone who sees a programming language as a formal language and sees a good programming language as one that supports powerful analyses or powerful static guarantees. The social scientist is someone who studies humans, often empirically through an experiential lens, either for the sake of humans or for the sake of design when working in an HCI context. The humanist is also looking at humans, but they're often focusing more on structural critique, stemming from critical theory, rather than an experiential approach that might be informed by qualitative research. So in designing the book, when I design the exercises, I make sure that there are things that each archetype could sit down and want to do. It could be as simple as writing a function in the language of your choice. It could be implementing core language technologies. It could be to have some theory without having people do a lot of proofs. I have things like doing derivations of context-free grammars, determining the language of the regex. This is a compromise in terms of the level of theoretical difficulty. For social scientists, we could have things like autoethnographic studies, all the way to corpus studies about a discourse that programmers have. For humanists, I have prompts for essays that you could slot into classes in cultural studies, gender studies, disability studies. These also exercises aim at multiple complexity levels. These range from things that I would slot into an exam, reasoning through an example, the example semantics of a program, type checking examples, regular expression examples, to things that would be appropriate for an undergraduate homework or project, things like implementing a specific feature or running a user study. And then have some prompts in there that are research level, that are really meant as something for people that are either doing a PhD or master's thesis. So speaking of the assignments, the way that I make this work, and it has worked very well, I just finished the first undergrad version of this class, is that I split things into a coding assignment spoke and a written assignment spoke. The coding assignments are auto-graded. The written assignments are participation graded, relying on intrinsic motivation and kind of peer community to ensure high quality. So start off giving them some toy programs in our language of choice. I have chosen to run this course in Rust, but the book is designed to support multiple languages. They then write a parser using parsing expression grammars. They then write an evaluator as part of an interpreter. They then write a static type checker. And at the very end, they've switched into design mode rather than coding mode, and they do some coding to support their data analysis. On the written side, they start with goal setting. They brainstorm a study before they've seen the techniques they need. They reflect with some autoethnography. And then later on, they've seen the techniques for design, and they give a detailed study plan. We spend a day in class running the studies, and they write up their results from that study on their final written project. This is built to scale. This is something reviewers ask me about, and I did it this way because I need to scale. Maybe students most want TA while having research load. And so this is something that is designed for people. The last choice of best is something that's important for class because class can ignore language just even if book can. I base this on my learning goals, students' unstated opinions, and what I know my students are. What is being able to implement their evaluator and type checker, their parser, into steps. So what I want is them to have statically typed language with bunch of data types and recursion. Based on they're career-oriented, I need people to motivate it to them that way. Even though it's not something that has wide yet, it's a growth thing, and you've responded very well to that argument. In addition, they have prior exposure to systems programming, a little bit of exposure to functional programming, but zero exposure to follow that type of stuff. Okay. This is a big choice because what this allows us to do is look on their knowledge and then this is a starting point where they explore all sorts of deeper, more advanced in Rust, and this worked well. So I want to share a few stories from my students. The first one was a letter a student sent me at the end of the beta version of the graduate course in spring. This was fully project-based of the course. And so coming in, he talked about how he didn't have any interest in theory until he took the course, but going through this process made him more interested in the theory than he was before. He really enjoyed freedom of design, and it was something where this structure made him feel motivated during an otherwise tough term. In the full letter, he talks about how there was, he worked maybe more hours than he should have, but actually felt satisfying because the motivation was tied in with it. So the second story was from the version I just finished, and I wanted to show how the user study work can serve as an opportunity for creative exploration among students who might in CS might. So we had one student who wanted to learn whether posture affected a programmer's productivity. He told the game chair hypothesis, and so he said, and half the class is on the front program, and half of them slouch at their table and program. And so it was hard not to laugh. It was hard not to get but as the teacher, I felt this was very good at the class because this gave an opportunity for nerdy technical group of people to start seeing each other's interest and taking them to laugh together without compromising. Okay, the third story was that after the user study, the homework had an opportunity for students to do some creative coding, any of the media creative-oriented languages that we use as case studies. Out of 37 homework submissions, 19 students chose to do that. We had things like fractals, cartoons, and text adventures, but one really stood out. So without me prompting this, one of the students wrote a time-titled text adventure game using Rust for their implementation, and I could not think of a better way to reverse the desired takeaway message of this project, which is that the PL are the designers and all friends. So I'm going to run through the analysis, see proper amount of conversation. What I did is I analyzed 3 courses and my feedback from 3 courses and course evaluations to guide the design of this project. The old one was an IPL course based on Sriram Krishnamurti's textbook PLAI. The graduate version is a project-based beta test using like book. And another one was an info program course. So I have feedback from the latest version that uses the full book, but it wasn't in time to submit the paper itself. So I looked at people's sentiment toward ungrading, things that we learned was that they felt it increased intrinsic motivation. That's the biggest one, the impact on learning outcomes. The second was instruction. There were some students that expressed concerns with rigor when I was doing a fully project-based course. that was what brought us to use this combination of largely auto-graded with aspects that are more ungraded facilitated. Language choice was something I talked about in the context of a by personal love bracket list programming. It was something that was unpopular in that introductory context, and that led us to explore alternative choices. I also, in feedback, social issues in the classroom. I will say during that graduate course, I was talking about social issues in class. As a transgender professor, there's actually kind of a natural experiment that happens very rarely. I saw more of this when I was in early transition compared to before transition. We should be aware that women professors get more as than male professors do. The good news is that as I continue to hone this, I've gotten pretty good responses from this latest version of the course. All right, so future plans. I now consider the course to be released. I am still revising it, adding content, and looking for an open access academic publisher. This is something that really could not have happened without community, and it is something where I hate that I couldn't be there in person. I really want to look for opportunities to chat and collaborate with people. So if you are interested in using any part of this in your classroom, I would love to talk and support you with that. I also want to add things in future editions of the book. I want to emphasize the diversity of research styles and research that gets done by including interviews from interesting people in the research community just to whet students' appetites. And if you would love to be interviewed, I'm happy to do that. I also want to include some art. One of my dreams is to draw some comics of the 5 archetypes to kind of motivate students in each chapter. If you're interested in being involved in comics in any way, that would be perfect. One of the chapters we most want to add, you may have seen similar things from Felina's keynote earlier today and Felina's research paper as well, is we really want to build out discussion of supporting programmers with different native languages. And so it turns out one of the, and also just cultural aspects of PL design. It turns out one of the best case studies out there is based on classical Chinese, or in Mandarin you call that Guwen or Wenyuan. My Mandarin's fine, but my Guwen is not. And so if we have anyone proficient in that, I would love to talk to you about some of that work. And that's the end of my slides. I'm about to turn it over for questions. But this really was something that was developed in community, even though it's a sole author work. And so I want to acknowledge all the people who helped make this happen, whether it was people that encouraged me, gave feedback on the paper, people who gave me advice on their lived experience with disability and programming languages, or even people who just encouraged me to pursue this kind of broader research agenda. Thank you, and that's the end of the talk.
Can we, great, there were many claps. I'm not sure you were able to hear that. Just to give you a little bit of context, I think most of us followed most of that. There were some internet issues, but not worth interrupting the speaker. So you may get some questions just to clarify parts of what might have been missed. Just to remind everybody how SPLASH-E is working, we're going to take 4 minutes to have small group discussions in the room about the presentation, and then we'll share out Q&A afterwards. So if you could mute the in-room mic. mic on? Hello. We've had some great interrupting conversations to keep going with the session. Are there any questions in the room for Rose?
Maybe. So you described the two tracks of the course, and we were wondering how that fits in a single semester.
So that fits in less than a single semester because I teach that in a 7-8 week term at WPI. So I can tell you how it fits. And really, the way that makes this work is I find that when students have some priorities in place, that really helps them. And so the way that the course is structured is in the first half, it's very heavy on teaching kind of the technical coding kind of stuff. And then, your homework is due after the lecture finishes, right? So there's some time in between there. And so there's a bit of catch up where they have some time in the second half to reinforce that kind of stuff, finishing their assignments. And then the written homeworks that go with it, those are graded based on whether you hand in a complete attempt that you make an expert on. And so what's going to happen is the students that are weaker or more, stressed for time, they're going to kind of do the minimum there, and they're going to pick up some of the information, but not as deeply. The students who have time to put in the extra effort, who are really motivated, who are really into it, they're the ones that finish the coding faster, and they're the ones that go above and beyond and put in the extra effort on the written. And we did have some people that did that. We had people that did things like put together a little game for a project. So it's about priorities, basically.
Hi. So I'm interested to know why you picked to use Rust for this course.
Good. So the motivations were in part based on community. If I wanted to do something that other PL education researchers have shown interest in, RAC is absolutely one of those, but Rust is another area that has been receiving that kind of attention. Some of it was based on a mix of personal interest of my own, since I've done some work in linear type kind of situations. It's something that I've wanted to do more of, but also something that I could motivate to students. So it's something where I can point them at the stats for language popularity and show them, oh, it hit the big popularity index for the first time this year. Oh, it's showing year after year growth. It's also at the same time something where I can give them some of those challenges, some of those features, but at the same time I can point to them. And what I'll do in a lecture is I'll say, here's a type error in Rust. Here is the thing you did in your C-based course, where C has a bug here, and Rust turns it into a type error. So it's something that I have a foothold to teach them a more advanced language on.
Hi, Rose. Feline here. Thank you for the book. I really love it.
Hey.
Here's a question. There's something that I've been struggling with teaching a similar course without your book, is that students already have a conception of what programming language research is, or they will learn about it in undergrad, and I think it's like semantics, basically, and POPL stuff. So when I started to teach, but also interviews RPL research, but also observation studies, I literally had a student say in class, yes, teacher, but there has never been a POPL paper like this. So are you sure this is PL research? Which I think is an understandable question. So I think that my question to you is there's really a big difference between the world your book describes, which is a world I would love to live in, and the world we live in now, where PL research is only 3 chapters of the book, and I don't know how to deal with it. And it started sometimes to feel like I was giving sort of a sermon to my students, like, yes, this is all very true, but they didn't really believe me. They thought maybe interviewing people was my hobby, and therefore it was valid, and they didn't believe me. I don't know how to deal with that.
So I will say, if you come up with a perfect solution to that, I will buy it from you. So I think there is partially an institutional aspect here. I'm almost, not quite, but almost the only PL person here. And so if they have no one else teaching them PL courses, well, whatever I say is PL, that's PL. But there is still that aspect of concern about respect and legitimacy, which is something that, I did grapple with in earlier versions. Some of the tricks that I've used to do that are, one, to make sure there are thorough scholarly research citations throughout the whole book. So when I ran my beta test of talking about things like gender and disability, they felt like it was just my opinion. But with the new version, the proper version of the book, I can go through and I can show them, here's High paper, here's a VLHCC paper, here is a paper in a gender studies journal, these kind of things. And that shut up people a little bit who need to be shut up. And the other aspect that I've done where I give myself the right to shut people up a little bit is on the first day of the class, I lay out, here's what this course is. This is half a CS course, this is half an HCI course. If you are not comfortable with the human-centered part of this course, I expect you to drop. It's okay if you don't know, if you don't have background, but if you are not open to learning about people, that is your choice, not mine. So that's what I've done so far, and that seemed to work.
Great. Thank you so much for the presentation. Let's thank our speaker again. I'm not sure you'll be able to hear the claps, but